Ezra Levant here for Rebel News. I'm in Washington, D.C. Behind me, the Lincoln Memorial. In front of me, the Washington Monument and the reflecting pool. It's an amazing and historic place. I'm in town for the conference on national conservatism, but I just wanted to take a few moments away from the hotel and come here to the Lincoln Memorial, because last time I was here, I did something I hadn't done before, which is I actually read the inscription on the wall, and I found it very powerful, and I've been thinking about it many times since. Obviously, Lincoln was the president during the U.S. Civil War, and he had two inaugural addresses. The first one was sort of on the precipice of war, and the second was thickly in it. And let's go in and read them, and I'll give you my thoughts on why I think they're so important, especially for discussions today about slavery and reparations and race relations. What Lincoln said over a century ago, I think, still resonates. Let's go listen. On the other side of the Lincoln Memorial is Abe Lincoln's more famous inaugural address. You probably know the first sentence, even if you don't know what it is. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth onto this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. That's actually about 10% of it right there. It's very short. But the second inaugural address by Lincoln is on the wall behind me. And it's too long for me to read here, but I'll put a link to the whole thing below this video. I am going to read the last third of it. The first two is basically Lincoln talking about how the war came, how both sides didn't want it, how slavery was one of the reasons. But let me now read the last third, which gives me chills even on this sweltering summer day. This is the chilling part. Yet if God wills that it continue, that is the war, that it continue until all the wealth piled by the bondsman's 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword, as was said 3,000 years ago, so still it must be said, the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us, to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work. We are to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. And I think the most terrifying part of that is Lincoln's statement that this Civil War will bleed as much as any slave who was hit by the lash. And this Civil War will cost as much as any wealth piled up by slavery. And I think it's true. And he has a biblical resonance there. He says that's God's will. And indeed it was. Did you know that the U.S. Civil War, which killed more than 600,000 Americans, was the most bloody war of all that the U.S. ever fought? More than the Revolutionary War, more than World War I, World War II, Vietnam combined. And I say this, and I came here because the United States is the only country that had such a civil war, in part to end slavery. And the British Empire before it is the only empire in the world that went to such lengths to end slavery, not only by buying the redemption of every slave in the empire, but for 50 years dispatching the Royal Navy to intercept slave trading ships from West Africa to the Americas. In fact, they captured hundreds of those ships and rescued hundreds of thousands of slaves. Every continent in the world except Antarctica has known slavery. There was slavery in the Americas before Europeans came here. There was slavery in Europe and Asia. There still is. Africa and the Middle East, there still is. I come here to read what Abraham Lincoln said about America's willingness to pay a price in blood and treasure to end the scourge of slavery. Show me another place in the world that can say that.